Almost every single jazz standard has some kind of a turnaround, so we need to have some licks that we can use over them. In today's lesson, I'm going to be teaching you different lines over the 1-6-2-5 and 3-6-2-5 chord progression and their variations. Let's do this. Hey everybody, this is Jamie Holroyd helping you learn jazz guitar. Welcome to the channel. In this lesson, I'm going to be teaching you how to improvise over the 1-6-2-5 chord progression by having some licks. In this lesson, we're going to be looking at using licks over the 1-6-2-5 chord progression and some of the variations of that, such as the 3-6-2-5 chord progression. The licks range from very simple ideas all the way to more advanced jazz substitutions, so I think you're going to get a lot out of this. The 1-6-2-5 chord progression happens very, very fast, so having licks to play over this is a really good way of utilizing some of the concepts that you might learn. Before we begin, I'd like to just go over what a turnaround is, just to clarify any misconception of what it might mean. So a turnaround is basically the part in a chord progression in which the harmony usually turns around to the chord in which the chord progression started on. So for example, if you're playing a song in the key of C, usually at the end of the section or the end of the tune, you would get something like a 1-6-2-5, which would be C, A minor, D minor, G, and that would turn you back around to the original C chord. So that's what that is. Of course, this could also mean a back cycle to 2, something like in Satin Dole, the very last bar of Satin Dole, you get a back cycle to the 2 chords. So you should be able to use these licks in most jazz standards, which you know. Of course, some other jazz standards, such as the rhythm changes, utilize the 1-6-2-5. That chord progression is just kind of crammed back to back with 1-6-2-5 and 3-6-2-5s. So let's get into this. The standard chords in a 1-6-2-5 are B flat, G7, C minor 7 and F. The chords referenced here are B flat, B diminished 7, C minor 7 and C sharp diminished 7. Now at first glance these chords might seem completely unrelated to the original chords, but I can assure you they do share harmony with their original chords. For example, the very second chord, we now have a B diminished 7. Originally there we had a G7 flat 9, but if you actually deconstruct a B diminished chord, you'll find that that's basically just a G7 flat 9 with a B in the bass. So it works great for voice leading, because now we have B flat, B, C and C sharp. That gives us a chromatically ascending bass note that we can use in our line, as we have done here. This lick starts with a descending B flat tetrachord, then it goes up a B diminished chord, then we have a descending C minor tetrachord and an ascending C sharp diminished arpeggio. This formula works fantastic for improvising over the 1-6-2-5 chord progression, and because both of these substitutes have so much original harmony shared, then you can actually use these chords over an original 1-6-2-5. If the chord sheet just says B flat, G, C minor 7, F7, these chords will absolutely work. Here we have another variation of the 1-6-2-5 chord progression. The variation that we have here is a 3-6 dominant 2, then a 5 chord. This once again is absolutely interchangeable with the original 1-6-2-5, so if a chord chart just says B flat, G, C minor, F, then these chords will work absolutely fine, and vice versa. What we have here is basically a strong harmonic pull towards a D minor. The tones there that are used at the beginning of that really kind of pull your ear to a D minor. Then we have an enclosure to the G7, the third of the G7 is B. And then we basically have some chromatic approach notes going towards the third of the dominant 2 chord, which is a C7. So usually we have a C minor 7 there, but a C7 can definitely be referenced, especially at fast tempos, without any harmonic problems whatsoever. An interesting point is that many 3-6-2-5 lines are kind of continuous, and it is definitely good to have some continuous lines, but this one kind of finishes halfway through that second bar. So I think that sometimes it's good to not always feel like we've got to play every single note in a chord. You can kind of just reference a chord without having to kind of continually play a bunch of eighth notes, as I did in the first example. So hopefully this provides a nice contrast to lick number 1. We're taking a different approach with the next lick. Rather than address each chord individually, we're going to zoom out and use two different triads to improvise over all four chords. Let's check it out. This lick uses a triad idea that goes up a fourth. Over the first two chords we use a B flat major triad, and over the next two chords we use an E flat triad. So really in that first bar we're disregarding that G7 flat 9 and just thinking B flat. And in the second bar we're actually thinking of E flat, and if you're kind of confused about why we're using E flat over a C minor, well, E flat is the relative major of C minor, so it works well. And of course this lick is quite similar. You've got one idea which is then repeated up a fourth, so of course it's got a strong harmonic pull naturally. So you can always do this when improvising over a 1-6-2-5 chord progression. You could even just use B flat for the entire all four chords really. I think the key to improvising over this successfully, and what many great jazz musicians do, is that they can zoom in on the harmony and they can really spell out the chords, and they can also zoom out, and having the contrast of both will really make you a better improviser. We are now going to be getting a little bit more advanced by looking at the Tad Dameron turnaround. Let's check it out. This turnaround can be heard in the jazz standard Lady Bird. It happens at the very end of that chord progression. Wes Montgomery also used this in his composition West Coast Blues. It's not the most common variation of the 1-6-2-5 chord progression, but it is certainly out there, and it's a really cool sound that you can actually apply over the original 1-6-2-5 chord progression, because the chords in the Tad Dameron turnaround have strong harmonic logic really. If you think about the chords in the original 1-6-2-5 turnaround, once again we have B flat, G, C and F, and then you compare the root notes of the Tad Dameron turnaround, then besides obviously the original chord which is B flat, then all the other chords are a tritone away, so they can share notes in common, and of course the pull of all these chords is back to the one chord. So really anything can work if it's got a strong pull to the one chord. When using these type of changes, I think it's a very good idea to use shorter harmonic ideas, things like arpeggios, tetrachords and triads, because the sound of these chords is already so strong. You don't want to be kind of thinking at the top end of that harmonic kind of that harmonic spectrum. You don't want to be thinking of things like scales there, because you want to really try and capture that sound as quickly as you can, because the chords move by so quick. So the line itself uses a mix of triads and tetrachords. Line number 5 simplifies things a little bit. We're going back to that original chord variation that we used over the 1-6-2-5, the 1 sharp 1 diminished, 2 sharp 2 diminished, and we've got a simple chromatic ascending pattern using guide tones. Let's check it out. The key to this lick really is rhythm. We've got a rhythmic motif which is used over all four chords and still spells out the original harmony. The final lick demonstrates using a common chord tone over all four chords in a jazz turnaround. Let's check it out. This final lick demonstrates yet another 1-6-2-5 chord progression substitute. This time we're starting on the 3 dominant 7 rather than B flat. We're going up a major third and starting on a dominant 7, and we're going down chromatically, which will eventually lead us back to the B flat major 7. So when you look at this type of chord progression, this can probably seem the most unrelated of all those that we've looked at so far, really. And you do sometimes see this chord progression on tunes such as Satin Doll and on Green Dolphin Street used as like a back cycle to the 2 chords. So it is important that you can spell this one out. Now, to make this one a bit easier, I think a really good idea is to use a common tone. So in this lick, you'll see that the note A is being used over all 4 chords, and A note works in some way, shape or form over all 4 chords, and basically I'm using that as a pivot note, and in between that I'm going to a guide tone of each of the chords. So hopefully this lick sounds a little bit more connected rather than just trying to kind of think of each chord on a standalone basis. So this example demonstrates using a common tone over a jazz turnaround. Thank you for watching this video. I hope that you found it useful and you now feel more confident when improvising over jazz turnarounds. Which lick was your favourite? How do you improvise over jazz turnarounds? I'd love to know what you think, so please share your thoughts in the comments section below. Finally, I'd like to say that if you'd like to get a PDF of any of these licks or any of the other material that you'll find on my YouTube channel, then you can do so by becoming a jazz guitar guru over at my Patreon page. I would also like to thank all my current Patreons for supporting these videos. You guys are the best. Thanks very much, and yeah, I'll see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching.